Cool. Well, my name is David. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Typewise.
Yeah.
And our mission is to make daily lives easier by decoding human thoughts. So
Okay.
you're probably also like one of these digital natives, and we spend, I think on average, it's 7.5 hours per day with our digital devices, be it laptops, phones, and so forth. And part of that time we spend like entering information, so like typing on a keyboard mainly, and that is inherently slow and it's inaccurate. The reason is that we still use a technology that was created from the age of typewriters 150 years ago, and we're still using it on our laptops, we still use it on our phones. But we could be much faster with a better, let's say, interface, and that's what is our vision at Typewise. That in the end, we could even kill the keyboard altogether. But right now, we just created a better version of the keyboard for mobile phones, also including artificial intelligence technology that really tries to predict the next words and thus help you save time. And as that AI technology gets better, we need to type less and less until we hopefully don't have to type anymore. And that's what we currently ship as a smartphone keyboard app in the app stores, with the promise of 4 times fewer typos, being able to work with multiple languages at the same time, giving you 100% privacy. But as we go forward, this product will evolve. And will be applicable to a lot of SaaS softwares as well, where the user has to, write a lot of text. And this is a technology that could augment the user experience of many SaaS businesses as well. So I think that could be quite relevant to many other speakers on your show.
Sure. Well, I have a bunch of follow-up questions for you. So first, decoding human thoughts, what does that mean? And why did you choose it as a mission? Because I understand it from a founder's perspective and probably the futuristic world domination aspect of it, as I like saying, as I like joking. But how is that useful for the end user? Like, what do you mean by decoding human thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, for the end user, you would like let's say the keyboard to exactly display at the end what you intended to write.
I get it.
And if then algorithms start correcting your stuff into something else, that becomes very frustrating. And so we said, well, algorithms are very important because they can eliminate typos that you make, and everyone makes typos often on laptops, so that saves you time because you don't have to click backspace and do all these manual adjustments. But obviously it has to understand what you wanted, so it has to kind of guess your intention. And that's what we say, it kind of reads. It doesn't have to read your mind, you're still typing it, but it has to understand what you meant and kind of help you bring that to paper.
That's like ML. It's like a huge database and compiling what you wrote before with other users, what they wrote before, and it's kind of learning on what you're kind of writing. And my limited experience with that, although like I use a lot my keyboard. I can see Apple, Android. How are you going to compete against those guys and their humongous database of data? Basically, they build their algorithm off that. How is Typewise going to compete with that?
Yeah, it's a fair question. So I think it's it's different things that we could do to be better. One is, as a small company, you also have the liberty to take new approaches and experiment also with your users in ways that maybe an Apple can't. And this has allowed us, I mean, we have a patent filed where we beat, for example, autocorrection algorithms from Google and Microsoft. So it shows that you can be better by just trying hard enough and really finding new approaches. We do have a very strong research collaboration with the Institute of like the Federal Institute of Technology here in Switzerland, and there are ex-Google guys in the team, and we have a research funding from the government to kind of bring this to the next level.
Yeah.
And we think with the right people, you can obviously achieve a lot. The other thing is also that we say our USP against Google, and I think we can never beat them on the amount of data.
Mm-hmm.
If you take Gmail and Google's predictive system works off Gmail,
yeah,
it can read billions of emails every day
mm-hmm.
and see what a lot of people do, and that's obvious. That's something we can never ever we probably can never replicate.
Well, who knows?
Unless we grow to the size of Google.
Yeah.
But we say we build our models in a different way. We build our models that they work on device,
okay.
which guarantees user privacy, which is very important also in like an enterprise context.
Yeah.
And that and with that in mind, it has a slightly different angle to this solution.
Okay, that's interesting.
And with that constraint, you also suddenly find new ways of making your models much more maybe much more performant given the limitations of the data you have.
Okay. Wasn't Einstein working in Basel in the patents office?
Maybe it was before my time, but
but I think he was actually. So I don't know why my brain just connected with like Basel and Einstein,
yeah.
But yeah, pretty interesting thing you were mentioning me here. You mentioned the privacy component, like how's your app more private, say than WhatsApp and other apps out there?
Yeah, because we don't submit any type of user typing data anywhere. I mean, the keyboard, from our point of view, it's like sandboxed.
Okay.
And when you take a Google keyboard or a Microsoft Swift key, those keyboards have an active internet connection, which feeds their central language models with the user data. To improve it. And when we say we build our models in a way, it also learns from you, but it does so within your personal environment.
Okay.
And now when you use, for example, a secure messaging app, such as the Signal, but your keyboard keeps sending data, there's little use of saying, I don't want to use WhatsApp, I use Signal, but at the same time use SwiftKey, which keeps sending data. Then it's a bit pointless. So for example, a secure messaging to work, you also secure keyboard. Otherwise, you never get that end-to-end privacy in place.
Okay. And is like Apple is pretty big on privacy. Have you, well, are they like also like stealing data as per se? Are they good on the privacy level from their keyboard, or are they like as bad as say Google, Android, and WhatsApp?
I don't want to say Google is like bad per se. It's in the end always a matter what happens to that learning from your data.
Yeah.
And it's something I think very I mean, it's very hard to first of all say what happens to the data. And usually if there's no leakage or no scandal, until there is one, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't think Google has malicious intents doing that. I think they have very legitimate reasons of aggregating user data to build better, let's say, language models. But still, that entails a lot of problems. Now, Apple goes a step further and says, well, they do much more on device.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, Apple prides itself of being a privacy first company. We also think that this is the future. And hence we believe that there's a lot of value in what we're building. Now, is Apple really doing what they're saying? I think that gets very difficult to analyze. In the
Yeah.
end, it's part of the operating system, and you can, if you don't trust the iOS operating system to do what it says it does, I think you need to do a serious IT security investigation. And I think
Yeah.
that then becomes very difficult to, usually that data is encrypted, and to be able to find out is maybe the keyboard sending a few packages of data back. I don't think this is we would like resources well spent from our end. But I would
Yeah.
say, I personally would say, look, if you don't trust the iOS operating system, you probably shouldn't own an iPhone.
Yeah, correct. And
Yeah.
I don't think they'll ever get hacked, like there's always a really small probability, but I mean, it would be really, really surprising to see like one of the big four getting hacked. I mean, I can understand that. I have a bunch of cybersecurity clients and can understand that like a meat packing company may get hacked, like, well, a
Mm.
big one. But I mean, a tech company like them, with a bunch of like their cybersecurity department must be at least 200 humans big, and most of those companies, they use AI as well. Google certainly acquired DeepMind and are doing a bunch of interesting stuff with it, and they probably also acquired other cybersecurity uh, algorithm slash companies. So not sure if they would ever get hacked, and want to discuss just a bit more about like the ethics of privacy. For example, like I know I'm not the typical person, but on my side, I don't really care about privacy and my data. Like first, I'm a really open person. Like I share pretty much everything online. I'm not saying like people should, because it's just a different way of thinking. But why are people so obsessed with having their data and their privacy? I can understand like that they don't want bad people to steal their shit, but what about like um, do they have something to hide? Like what is your opinion on the ethics of privacy, and why are people so like some are even aggressive when it comes to keeping their data? Why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I think it's different things. I think probably many of us have things that we would like to keep private, or private in front of other people. And it could be if you perform a search somewhere, and suddenly in a different context you have advertising popping up
Yeah,
when other people can see it.
yeah.
I don't know if you would like that.
Well,
Um,
it's certainly annoying. First, the ads, and well, the first, obviously that's the number one thing. It's quite annoying. I use Google Home, and it keeps popping those ads. And last week I was like, I'm gonna just like throw it in the garbage. I'm just gonna play music on my goddamn computer. Instead of asking a speaker and thinking I'm cool or something. Um, but talking about that, like I just hit some kind of point there. Something that doesn't scare me, but puts me uncomfortable, is like devices listening to me. Like that's a bit too much, right? Like when I'm having conversation with my wife, and there's a MacBook Pro here, a Surface, a Google Home listening to me. That's a bit creepy, right?
yeah, when you're out of control. And I think
Yeah,
that's why people, in certain applications you care about it, and in others you don't. But maybe you
yeah,
don't want, I don't know, let's say you're using a dating app, as tens of millions of people do every day.
yeah,
You probably wouldn't want that information that you're
definitely.
writing in that dating app is maybe used by some third party. You don't
Yeah,
even know that they have access to it.
yeah,
That's the point. It's not just maybe Tinder sees it,
yeah,
but Tinder opens maybe that up for other companies to access your data, to then use it for advertising or whatever other purposes. And
mhm,
the chain might be quite long,
yeah,
and you lose control over who sees it.
Mhm.
And that can make you uncomfortable because you don't know
Yeah,
who sees it. And
definitely.
I mean, if I Google, like if I search for a flight, I probably couldn't care less.
Yeah.
I know some people are obsessed even with that because they say
Mhm.
then, somebody knows where I've been. Fine. But I think certain other applications, you want to be more private. And
Yeah,
now
yeah,
that's why the keyboard is so interesting, because the keyboard is in every application and it sees everything. It's a bit like the device listening.
I get it.
Every
Yeah.
time you type something, it sees it, yeah, including your usernames and your credit card
Passwords. Yeah.
information and the whole thing. So there, you are a bit on a different level, and it's not. You want the keyboard to be secure when you're in a secure application, and you don't want, and you believe, okay, I'm in this safe dating application. Uh, but if you basically have the keyboard still listening in, that can turn into a problem.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so that's where I feel it's a slightly different use case of privacy, because it goes
Yeah.
much beyond just like one website or one application where you provide some information to.
Okay. I wrote a note while you were speaking earlier about like potential competitors, if you want. Where do you see Grammarly in the whole scheme of things? Because I use the Gmail like auto reply thing. I use Apple when I text, in terms of keyboard. Where do you see Grammarly in the whole scheme of things? Does Typewise correct mistakes? And I think Grammarly is a pretty neat startup. They have hundreds of millions in funding. Like, where do you see them in the scheme of things?
Yeah, I think they're a very successful company. It's probably way beyond a startup stage at this point.
Oh yeah.
Um, I would say it's almost complementary what we do. Like we're like the problem we solve is a step before Grammarly. Like we
Okay.
help you getting your thoughts into the digital device as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible.
Okay.
And then Grammarly would analyze what you've just written and tell you, hey, by the way, we think you might want to optimize that message.
Yeah.
And you
And
might
I.
not care in every instance. If you're like in WhatsApp talking in a group chat, you probably don't want Grammarly suggestions all the time.
Mhm.
So you might turn it off.
Yeah.
If you're writing a professional email, maybe it's useful. If it's
Okay.
your native language, maybe you also don't need it, because you're like, honestly, so I mean, it's still not perfect. There was an analysis by The Economist,
Mhm.
and I think Grammarly only spotted 8 out of 15 mistakes.
Okay.
Obviously, it's getting better, but it's
Yeah.
not a complete replacement to to a human language expert,
Mhm.
and it also sometimes changes something for the worse. So I
Okay.
think it's useful, especially for non-native speakers, or for people that have a less proficient level of the language.
Yeah.
If you're highly proficient in English, you probably don't even need it. Yeah. Um,
Mhm.
and we would say we just help you get the way what you want to say as quickly as possible. So I think it's two stages, or like two layers um, of support
Okay.
that could work together quite well.
Do you plan to go on desktop or
Yeah.
eventually? Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I wrote a bunch of other follow-up questions here because you gave me like lots of information when we started, and I was curious as per the how do you call it, the hexacom part, like of the keyboard, like how did that came up, like what was the experiment that you built that brought you to the conclusion that this hexacom was more efficient than the typical rectangular shape? Like, why hasn't Apple thought of that?
Yeah, I cannot tell you why they haven't thought of it, but I mean, in the end, it's an optimization of the space that you have on the touch screen for the keyboard. It basically maximizes the distance between the key centers,
Okay.
and that increases the accuracy, right? Because you make fewer, I mean, there's more space per key. And
Okay.
I think that was the main reason. There was quite a bit of research looking at other, like obviously other solutions, realizing that nobody really solved the issue of fast and accurate typing at the same time. And then also using existing scientific models from designing 10 finger like keyboards where they rearranged keys and using those algorithms in applying it to the touch screen. But they also weren't that useful because a lot of the rearranging keys doesn't really add a lot of value because your let's say the touch screen is anyway much smaller than a 10 finger, so your fingers don't have to travel a lot. But the traveling distance is quite little. So we didn't really rearrange the keys. As you can see, it's quite close to like a QWERTY layout, which then helps you in the onboarding process and getting obviously used to it, which requires typically like a few days until you're fully proficient.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, let's shift gears. I know like this is coming to an end, but let's take a good 10 minutes if we can to just like talk a bit more about like you, like David, like where like all those ideas came from, like who you are as, you know, a founder and stuff. I think that's really relevant to our audience. So like what have been your greatest wins last year, so in 2020, and what have been your greatest years, your greatest win this year? It can be personal or business, but tell me about your greatest win last year and your greatest win this year.
Sure. I mean, there are obviously different dimensions. I think last year, from a company point of view, we were able to start paying us a salary. I think we were just two founders trying this out. So then we closed our first financing round, and that was obviously like a big event. We could build a great team around it. And it's not just the two of us, but it's now like a broader group of people working on that vision. And I think we have quite like a big commonality of that vision, which was also like a process. So I think that's obviously great. I mean, this year, it's a good question. I think for me, obviously, I mean, we've, you know, broken through that 1 million downloads, which for me was at some point a key milestone, although now it doesn't really feel
real.
No, it's more like it doesn't feel like any big achievement at all. I think also traction, because I think it became evident that we would cross it like months before we crossed it. I kind of knew this is going to happen. It was on track. So I think you don't have this moment where like, wow, finally. It was more like, okay, that was already clear. But then you already have enough time before it even happens to think about what's next. So even once it happens, you're already like, well, shit, this is nothing. Actually, by now I know we need to get 10 times more. And I think that's the stress, I think, with any business achievement, that you're always, at least I apply this to myself, but I would say it's probably a lot of, even if you look at very accomplished people, I mean, you could even look at a Bill Gates, for example, who just set himself very ambitious targets with poverty reduction and all that. I mean, he will never achieve his vision. That's clear. And you're always running behind of what even the people on this planet with most resources, they're never accomplishing their goals. I mean, you can look at presidents, you can look at almost anybody. So I think that's a challenge that I realize, well, even if I accomplish the next milestones of like the next financing round and then the one after, and we get here, you'll probably then just keep measuring yourself with, yeah, then you say, oh, now I need to be like Grammarly and get 100 million like users and and then you're like that, and you're like, shit, now it's like the next one. And so it just keeps, it just gets more and more crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big danger. And then I would say, well, what is the other milestones? I think for now, I mean, in my former life, I was like a strategy consultant. So I was gone like 4 days a week with a client. And now I have much more time with my family and like in the home.
That's cool.
I can bring the kids in the morning, I can pick them up. It's obviously then the danger that, you just keep on working in the evening. So I think having then that balance is also difficult. But I think being home more, having more control over your schedule, which you also have to enforce. But if you do, then that gives a lot of qualities that if you're part of like a corporate grind, maybe you don't have. So I think that's also something that I think looking back at this entrepreneurial journey, it's not just saying, hey, oh, we've all these business achievements, but maybe also what are the what have I been able to do in terms of relationships. And I think I think that was like Jack Dorsey. I don't know if it was a quote from him, but I really liked it. I think he said something around like nobody cares or like what business success you have, but it just matters how you are with your relationships, because that's what will outlast anything that comes after. And even if it's like a successful company but you broke all your like relationships, I think you probably did something wrong.
That's interesting. I have many follow-ups here. Okay, so first thing was the goal setting and goal achievement thing. I view this like as hiking. Like in hiking, you just go up and then you reach some kind of plateau, and then you need to enjoy the view. So you need to enjoy the 1 million. In some way, you don't need to pop a champagne or something, but you need to enjoy the view while you're there and with your team. Like, because a business is like a sports team. It's not your family, it's a sports team. So you talk with your team. Well, good job, guys. But I mean, it's the Everest, right? And even the Everest, I mean, there's a top at the Everest, but you're right. In life, there's no real plateau where you're there and it's done. And to be honest, nobody wants to get there. Nobody wants to reach a point at which they're like, okay, I'm done and that's it. I like saying that I'll never retire. Like, on your side, do you ever plan on retiring?
No, but I do have this vision of maybe, just spending an afternoon in the garden and just reading a book and
Sure.
not feeling, oh shit, I should be doing something else, but that I can really enjoy that time. And
Or not
I
being
don't
in the
know. I mean,
trenches, like at some point as the founder, you need to get off the goddamn trenches. And that depends on what kind of business you want to build. And that's a dilemma that on my side, obviously, I often face. And even like raising capital and putting those stresses on me, I want to maintain some kind of business that will allow me to enjoy my life and having a great life quality. And to follow up like on what you were saying with the family and everything. Well, obviously, I think some human beings and the greatest businessmen alive, including Jack Dorsey, Bill Gates, and Elon, for example, I think they do leave a huge legacy from a business standpoint. But obviously, I think there's an equilibrium too. I think like Elon, probably 98 or 99% of his life is dedicated to his business, and that's cool. I mean, he has his own thing, but like we were talking about privacy, right? Privacy to me is my family life. It's the time that I spend with my loved ones. That's an aspect of you that needs to be strong in your life. And I think that if you juggle well between life and business, it can have both can have a huge impact on one another. You can learn a ton in business, and that can have a huge impact in your personal life, and same vice versa, the other way around. And I think not a lot of entrepreneurs do that, but I do understand that, like, when you found a business, like you did, and you get some funding, I guess like investors are waiting for some performances, right? So that's kind of the stressor. And in terms of retirement and the gardening thing, well, that's a cool vision. Like mine is pretty much like getting on a ranch, and
Yeah.
building things. And like here in Oaxaca, for example, when I buy a ranch in the mountain,
Okay.
horses and like dogs, and like all the ranch stuff.
You can
And
make some Oaxaca cheese. Yeah.
some Oaxaca cheese, some wine. Like I'm a maker, so like obviously it's cool to spend time in family, but it's cool to create stuff also, and gardening is also really cool. Like I helped my father recently with his new house and stuff, but I think that equilibrium is quite important. And talking about like entrepreneurs, you name Bill Gates, Jack Dorsey. Who's your favorite entrepreneur out there?
Yeah, I was never into celebrities, even as a younger as a kid.
Neither am I.
So I did. I don't know. Um, I don't really have a like a celebrity, let's say, person as a role model,
You
in
have
a
like
way.
books that have been authored by someone that you admired, like business philosophies or.
Yeah, I'm thinking. My bookshelf is back here, but yeah, I'm reading this book of Ray Dalio.
That's a good
Um,
one.
yeah, it's a good one.
Hmm.
But also, what I always hate, like I also read the one from Jack Dorsey, from Jack Welch.
Okay.
Uh, he's a bit out of fashion nowadays.
Yeah. General Electric.
Yeah. What I don't like so much about it is that they always claim how they have a very happy family life and a very
Okay.
successful business life.
Uh-huh.
And maybe that's true, and that's fine, because it's maybe, yeah, you could say, oh, it's jealousy, like a
Mm-hmm.
person who kind of has it all and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's totally up to them. And yeah, but it just reads a little bit fishy in a way.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
reads everything is rosy, and I mean, yeah, kind of. Um, and I find it, like, the personal storytelling part is a bit dishonest. It's
Okay.
obviously, I mean, you wouldn't write a book about your problems with the family. It's also like not nice to your family, because to have, I mean, every family has difficulties
Yeah.
probably,
But
and
Ray
that's
mentioned
normal.
in his book that he had some rough times. I mean, he mentioned that his son
Yeah, but
was
more, yeah,
suicidal and stuff like that. No?
exactly. But I know that he does, but it's all, I don't know. It doesn't feel like, there's no tone of regret.
Yeah.
It's
Well.
almost like, yeah, yeah, of course, yeah, okay, they had hard times, but the way I read it, and again,
Mhm.
it's very as objective, of course,
Yeah.
it's not like a big regret. And to be honest, probably every person, I don't know, not every person, I think if you're probably very spiritual, maybe you learn, like, maybe you don't have regrets,
I don't.
because but still, I think if you reflect on your life, there's maybe like a lot of
Yeah.
ifs,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
When I think
And
about
I
it, yes, I do have regrets, like from my early life, from my 16s, let's say.
and that's what I in those books I don't really feel.
Uh-huh.
It's more of a way of, okay, this is how I led my life,
Yeah.
and it was a very good way of leading it. I don't want to tell anyone how to lead their lives, but you can learn from me how to lead a good life.
Yeah. Well, I
And this is a
think.
bit and it's also fine. It's a bit the purpose of the book,
Yeah.
but I, yeah,
I think like most people, well, first, most people are dishonest, and if you're gonna write a book, you might edit some part,
Sure.
willing or not, of your book. And they have like editors. Their editors might just tell them like edit this one, so that it can fit your narrative, or however you say that word, better, so that like the insights can get quicker to the brains of or reader. Jack Welch, I didn't read it. If you're referring to that one, um, Ray Dalio's Principles, pretty much a Bible. AKA that I read it like I don't know how many times, and
Agreed. Yeah.
I keep rereading again. It's so good, And what I like about this book is it's really short insights. It's like little paragraphs. Do you have the book or the audiobook?
I have the book. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so it's pretty cool, and yeah, if it's the same book that I read, it's black, and then there's two
Yeah.
segments, like one
Yeah.
is black, and that's one of my favorite book. And actually, when I started my journey a couple years ago in Oaxaca, I brought it with me. Really good book. Do you still have a couple more minutes, or should we wrap this up?
Yeah. I think at quarter two, I need to jump.
Okay,
So
okay,
maybe
cool.
2, 3 minutes. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just finish up like with what what does a day look like for you? Like at what time do you get up? And like don't hesitate to tell me about like your best habits in one day. What makes you like highly performant in one day? Like tell me about the schedule and the things that you do to make you better.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm actually listening to this Atomic Habits
Okay,
right now.
James Clear,
I
really
think
good
it's
again.
yeah. I think I can also. I'm at the beginning.
Okay,
But I think there, what I just also reflected a bit on the habits this morning as I was listening to it, and I think he talks about how um, the the strongest habit formation is if you like if they're connected to your beliefs. So if you see yourself in a certain way, um, and then those habits that pay in to you becoming that person you want to be, I think you will always prioritize those habits.
yeah,
Um, and usually I mean, I try to do my daily exercise, or at least
okay,
4 or 5 times a week.
okay,
I think that actually helps me a lot. I like to do it in the evening, so it gives me a bit of a cut after the day at work, and kind of um, gives you a fresh perspective on things after you kind of like crank the sweat. I think that's one thing. I think another thing is, um, and I try to get also better at it, is really to take, especially on weekends or also evenings,
yeah,
to take the time with the kids and really be there and do something that
that's
also they
good.
want to do. They're still very small, and sometimes they want to do stuff that I maybe don't find super interesting from the
Yeah.
activity per se, but
Mhm.
in the end it's more about seeing the world through their eyes. And
Yeah.
I think that's a habit that I'm growing into. And I think those, you could really see that once you did it, yeah, you like, or I really feel, well, that was a good habit to just like good, well invested time.
Mm.
What I really hate is checking the emails in the evening. So I actually stopped checking emails. So I only get a download stats every day.
Okay.
It always comes in at 11 p.m.
Okay.
And I
Same
stopped
here.
looking at it
Okay.
before going to bed, because what can happen? I mean, so there are three things. Either it's normal,
Mhm.
okay,
Mhm.
fine, you read it, you delete it, didn't add any value.
Yeah.
Maybe it's very good, but if it's very good, I already know about it because there's a
Mhm.
trigger leading to that. So we anyway know about it already. So there's no upside because I already know that it's going to be a good day.
Yep.
Or it is an unexpectedly bad day for some reason. And then that obviously starts triggering thoughts.
Yep.
And you don't want to go with those thoughts to bed with shit and like what happened and
Yeah.
yeah, why? And then, so I really stopped looking at that email, and it took me a long time, but I think it's a
Mm.
small habit change.
It's a huge
Um,
one.
but it can, yeah, but those things, I think, I need to get better at.
Yeah.
Also structuring the day, keeping, you know, if I have to do something, maybe reserving a time blocker, that I don't have too many calls, but I actually get time to also get stuff done.
Mm.
And that I don't sit here when I have a free hour and be like, oh shit, I have 20 things to do.
Yeah.
Which one am I going to doing? And I start doing this, I realize, oh, I'm not, this is going to be too hard. Let me do something else. And you get into this butterfly mode of, and then you realize, shit, it's too much. And of course, we do everything with sprint planning and so forth, but nobody plans my, let's say, my CEO sprint.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, that is on me, and I'm usually not sitting down with myself and do a sprint planning.
Yeah.
But so I think having those time slots where I have time to do my own stuff, I think that's very important. So I had a guy that said he does, in the mornings he works proactive and in the afternoons reactive, so he only takes calls in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I could try, I think, with certain, depends on your power, of course, with whom you want to have a meeting, but it's, I think, a good strategy. I also try to do more the team things in the morning, have time for my teams where I think I'm still fresh.
Okay.
And the afternoons more the external stuff.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So training, so like exercises, spending time with family / playing, and playing is huge. Like I think a lot of as adults we stop playing, we stop being children, you know, and playing helps us relax a lot as CEOs, you know, whether it's a sport, whether it's with children's. Me, for example, I like playing wrestling with my wife, you know. When sometimes I see that she's angry, I'm like, okay, let's just wrestle it out, and let's put the negative energy out, you know, and that's a huge one. And finally, blocking your time. And yes, it's huge. It's urgent vs important, you know. Like if you do all urgent, I mean, your business is not gonna progress a lot. If you do what's important 80% of the time, and 20% of the time you do what's urgent, well, you might have some kind of equilibrium and high growth there. So huge habits there. David, thank you for coming at the podcast. I know that you're busy, and I think it was really good. You referred us some great books here, great habits too, and you gave us a good idea of your business. I think it's really exciting and interesting what you guys are building at Typewise. So congrats on that. And I mean, we'll be in touch for the rest, all right?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, same to you. Thank you.